we're gonna shift gears here because this is a story that has been making its rounds that has just made me sick to my stomach. And this is from an op-ed in the New York Times by Nicholas Kristof from May 6th. This is a story about Dr. Willie Parker, a Southern Christian abortion provider. The article begins, "No issue in America is more toxic than abortion, and that's partly because it is today so closely associated with religion. While many feminists see abortion as a matter of choice, some Christians see it as murder." I mean, I guess it depends on how you define murder. If you think murder is the killing of an innocent human being without any just provocation, then I guess that's kind of what it is. Anyway, the article continues. "Then there are people like Dr. Willie Parker. Dr. Parker is black, feminist." He's a man, but yeah, I guess he's also a feminist. "Dr. Parker is black, feminist, and driven by his Christian faith to provide abortions in the South, where women seeking to terminate a pregnancy have few options. I believe that as an abortion provider, I am doing God's work," Parker writes in his new memoir, Life's Work. "I am protecting women's rights, their human right to decide their futures for themselves and to live their lives as they see fit. Since childhood, Parker has been taught that abortion was wrong, and for the first half of his career as an OBGYN, he refused to perform abortions. But then he had what he calls his come-to-Jesus moment, an epiphany that his calling was to help women who wanted to end their pregnancies." It doesn't really explain how he came to that realization. Maybe it was, I'm guessing that Jesus did not actually come to him and say, "You should do that." That's my take there. But anyway, continuing. "Since 2002, he has been providing abortions, mostly on the front lines in southern states, walking past picketers who scream that he is a baby killer." All right, look, I've stood outside of abortion clinics for many, many, many hours. Okay. I have stood outside of abortion clinics for entire afternoons. I have met many an abortion clinic picketer. I am an abortion clinic picketer. In fact, I would say I'm about as regular an abortion clinic picketer as far more regular than 99.9% of the population. I have literally never seen a single person scream at a doctor that he's a baby killer. All right. Anyway, the article continues. "He puts up with the danger," he says, excuse me while I roll my eyes, "because it's morally right to help desperate women." Boy, I should have saved that eye roll. "If that seems incongruous, let's remember that conservative Christianity's ferocious opposition to abortion is relatively new in historical terms." Now, this is where the article gets even stupider. The article says, "The Bible does not explicitly discuss abortion, and there's no evidence that Christians traditionally believe that life begins at conception. St. Thomas Aquinas, the father of much of Catholic theology, believed that abortion was murder only after God imbued fetuses with a soul at 40 days or more after conception." Okay. That is the biggest load of something I'm not allowed to say on the radio in this family program. That is about as big a load as I have ever heard. The Bible, first of all, the Bible does discuss the idea that life begins in the womb. "Before I knit you together in your mother's womb, I knew you." That is from the Bible. Furthermore, we have writings even from the first century of Christianity detailing how abortion was grievously immoral. Even more so, they tried it. This is this canard about Thomas Aquinas. All right, and let me explain this. There's this canard that says that pro-choice people, in their feeble attempts to get Christianity to defend themselves, will say, well, Thomas Aquinas didn't think abortion was murder. All right. First of all, Thomas Aquinas was going off of the best science available at his time, which was Aristotle, okay, which was, they had no conception of how embryology worked, or very little conception of how embryology worked. The article says that Thomas Aquinas believed that abortion was murder only after God imbued fetuses with a soul at 40 days or more after conception. They believed that because they were looking at fetuses and didn't believe that anything was alive in the womb until the fetus actually sort of looked like a human. And they were basing it off of what fetuses looked like after miscarriages. Thomas Aquinas and Aristotle also didn't think that Women had a soul until 80 days after conception. And this was because the fetuses coming out didn't really look like everything had been developed as much with external. Anyway, to make a long story short, Thomas Aquinas didn't have very good science to go off of. He was making his best guess based on the science available to him at the time, basing a lot of it off Aristotle. So no, he didn't think life began in the womb until some period following conception, but it's because he didn't understand modern embryology. Once Christians began to understand modern embryology in the middle of the 19th century, when we began to realize, oh wait, when a sperm cell hits an egg cell, you now have a new separate organism in existence that is in fact alive. It is growing. It is a new biological entity. That's a new human being, and to kill that human being is immoral. Once people realized that in the middle of the 19th century, that is when every state in the Union began to pass laws outlawing abortion. And that is when religious bodies like the Catholic Church, for example, began to adapt their teaching to very explicitly say that no, abortion is murder. Abortion is the taking of innocent life. But even before then, every Christian body believed that contraception was wrong prior to the 1920s. So abortion was never held to be a good thing by any Christian body. Abortion was held to be immoral at best and seriously immoral at worst. Okay, and we have evidence of this in Christianity dating to the 1st century, to the Didache, this document that was written during the lifetime of the apostles that talked explicitly about how people believed that infanticide and abortion and contraception were all seriously wrong. The article continues with even more stupidity. Let's see. There are even quotes in this article that go so far as to say, here's what this Willie Parker guy says. Parker accepts that a fetus is alive, but says that life doesn't begin at conception because an egg is alive as well, and so is a sperm. Life is a process, he writes. It is not a switch that turns on in an instant, like an electric light. That is the biggest load of B as in bull and H as in honky I have ever heard. Of course, there is a definitive moment. It's called fertilization. Yes, an egg is part of a living organism, and a sperm is a part of a living organism. But when they meet, something changes. A new organism comes into being. A new organism with its own DNA, with its own set of 64 chromosomes, 32 from mom, 32 from dad. Life does begin. A new life does come into existence. It isn't a process. And this man is apparently a doctor. It's not a process. It happens right there. This is an unbelievably stupid article, and it's an op-ed in the New York Times, and this guy's book, this apparently, quote, Christian abortionist book, has been promoted by Oprah. We're going a little long here, so we're gonna take it into a break right now, folks. But when I come back, I'll rant and rave maybe just a little bit more about this article from the New York Times. This is Right to Life Radio. I'm John Girardi. Stay tuned. Thank you again for joining us. We're talking here on Right to Life Radio about this op-ed piece from earlier this week in the New York Times about this allegedly Christian doctor, Willie Parker, who is becoming a sort of prominent figure as the Christian abortionist. And his book has been promoted by Oprah, and now it's being promoted in the pages of the New York Times. He has such blindingly idiotic quotes as saying, from the article, it says, Parker accepts that a fetus is alive, but says that life doesn't begin at conception because an egg is alive as well, and so is a sperm. Life is a process, he writes. It is not a switch that turns on in an instant like an electric light, which is absolutely 180 degrees wrong. Yes, life does begin in an instant. That instant is called fertilization. It is when an egg and a sperm meet, they are no longer two cells that belongs to the mom, one belongs to the dad. They are now combined into a new cell, a new kind of cell called a zygote that has its own completely unique set of DNA, its own unique set of 64 chromosomes, 32 from mom, 32 from dad. That constitutes a new human being. So yes, life does begin in the flip of a switch, and it's called fertilization. And apparently this man somehow managed to get a doctorate. Beyond this, let's continue with what the article says. It also purports to go into the history of abortion law in the United States and to say that abortion was totally legal in America up at the time of the founding, and that it was only in the middle of the 19th century that anyone began to have any problem with abortion. So let me dig into this, okay? So here's what the article specifically says. One common view is that life begins at quickening, when the mother can feel the baby's kicks at about 20 weeks. When America was founded, abortion was legal everywhere until quickening. And it wasn't until the 19th century that states began enacting laws prohibiting abortions, beginning with Connecticut in 1821. All right, this so profoundly misrepresents the history of abortion that I think I need to step in and discuss it. So, at the time of our founding, abortion was not legal, okay? The way American law functioned at the time of the founding was that we didn't have too many statutes dictating our laws. So it wasn't like there was a statute about murder. If you commit murder, and murder is defined like this, and if you commit murder, the penalty is this. We didn't really have statutes. America was part of this system called the common law tradition, which is seen in England and the countries that England ruled at one point or another. So you can see the common law. The common law exists in the United States, in Canada, in Australia, in England, Scotland, etc. And the idea of the common law is that basically it's a system of precedent with laws that are where judges decide cases, and there's this system of precedent where a judge makes a decision on a given question, defines a certain legal doctrine, and that decision gets passed down to subsequent judges in a sort of history and tradition of precedent. Okay. Now, in the United States, we were part of this common law tradition. Abortion was not really, there were just not a lot of cases relating to abortion at the time of our founding. But most of the cases were negative about abortion's legality. Certainly in cases of quickening, doctors would be prosecuted, but there was not any kind of consistent case law indicating that abortion before quickening was at all legal. And in fact, it's very, very likely that abortion was almost never practiced. For one thing, given the sort of consistent Christian belief that existed really before the 1920s, that contraception was also something immoral. Pretty much every Christian denomination believed this before the Church of England opened up its teaching in the 1920s. In combination with a belief that that the killing of a living human being was wrong, most people believed that abortion was seriously wrong. So it's such a misrepresentation to say that in America, abortion was legal until the middle of the 19th century. It's just not true. And abortion was probably very rarely practiced because there was no safe way to do it without seriously jeopardizing the mother's life. So, in short, there is no justification as a Christian to promote abortion. The New York Times is promoting utter nonsense. And I really hope that this Willie Parker guy, this Christian abortionist, doesn't become some national figure.